you. Hello, Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. Let me check my analytics. Are people here? Okay, there are 8 people. Am I audible? Awesome. Thank you. All right. Perhaps we can. Let's go. Okay. Thank you, folks. Uh, Again, welcome to this new format that we wanted to introduce through UX Studio. This is something that I'm trying for the first time, so please bear with me. So, live webinar is something that we've thought about before. So, we wanted to share our expertise and knowledge through this format, and let's hope we take a learning of from this webinar. So, I'll give a quick introduction of UX Studio and what we do. So we are a digital product agency, design agency based out of Budapest, and we've been in this field for around 10 years, and we have multiple people working from various locations. So we are remote first, but we also follow like hybrid model for whoever is in Budapest. And yeah, we want to start this new educational or teaching experience, and one was through podcasts that we did earlier, and now it's through webinars, and we are also hosting a lot of live events. So yeah, we have around 60 people in the studio, and let me share my presentation. Awesome. This is cool. I'm using this new tool, like a streaming tool, and it's pretty awesome. So yeah, the goal of this session is to understand basically how rapid prototyping works, and how at UX Studio especially we follow a timeline, and how we kind of play along with the researchers to uh, kind of fit the client strategy and use prototyping and discovery in a very effective way. Also, the do's and don'ts of rapid prototyping, actual ROI and value because of rapid prototyping. This is something very tricky, but we'll get to the that later in this webinar. Yeah, like I said, I've introduced the studio, and some of the services that we offer are research, audit, expert reviews, discovery, etc. But the main focus for, or the main USP I would say, for UX Studio is discovery and research, and that's something that is very crucial for rapid prototyping to work as well. So that's something that we value really highly, and it's benefited a lot of our clients as well. um, so okay, yeah, let's go to rapid prototyping. This is something that I've been interested in or following for a very long time. So David Kelly, I don't know if Tom Kelly said this, but yeah, Tom and David, the co-founders of IDEO, they said that if a picture is worth 1,000 words, a prototype is worth 1,000 meetings. And as you get experience with prototyping and research and usability tests, it makes a lot more sense, because you avoid a lot of back and forth between the stakeholders, and it helps when you have a clear direction, and especially when there are different domains involved, like tech people and marketing people, business folks, CEOs. All of these people, they have their own individual set of tasks, and when they are invested in that or soiled into that so much, it really helps if everybody comes together to have a common product vision. And prototyping in a way, especially in a discovery phase, helps this kind of vision materialize through all of the disciplines that I mentioned. So this makes a lot of sense, and this is something that I subscribe by, something we subscribe by. And yeah, let's try to understand what a prototype is. For me personally, it's not necessarily a sketch. Just a sketch, I wouldn't call it a prototype or a wireframe. It's still useful to uh, test your wireframes and sketches, but essentially I would say a prototype is a flow, a simple flow, or a set of screens, I would say, that kind of defines um, any point of a customer journey, and that is what I would call as a prototype. um, yeah Good communication through content, and something that's scalable, something that is low cost, is what would probably make a good prototype. And yeah, with just one screens, it's really hard to gauge the level of um, effectiveness of a particular flow. So this is why I say that it's not just a sketch, wireframe, or a mockup, but a whole simple whole flow. And it's really useful to test and validate your ideas. And I've since I joined UX Studio, I've been very much into prototyping, and it's really helped, especially with the research. A quick example that I could give is, for example, if you want to test a contact form, there could be multiple input fields, and prototyping, at least before, not maybe recently, since the variables and everything in Figma, it's probably much easier, but still, when the user can type in a prototype, it makes a huge difference. Or use conditional formatting in a prototype, it makes a lot of difference. So for example, in a contact form, when the user can type their email, and when you can validate that email, that's really useful. Whereas in Figma, you'd have to just do a mockup of all the possible scenarios and connect to through that, and that takes a lot of effort and time, and it creates a lot more assumptions for the researchers. And when you have a tool, or use a tool that enables you to do conditional formatting and user inputs, it reduces a lot of these assumptions that I'm talking about. So yeah, and the benefits, I would say, are sharing a vision. We will talk more about the benefits later as we progress. Quick feedback, shipping features, and reducing development costs. And handoff to developers is really good in the sense that, when, like I said before, when developers can get an idea of what the product team is trying to build, it really helps them kind of map out the logics beforehand and see all the possible scenarios beforehand. And especially in an agile workflow, when they kind of estimate um, the amount of time it would take to build a feature, it's easier for them to estimate these things, because the logic is already running behind them, and they can also give valuable input to the designers and the product team, whether as to if a particular way of interaction can work or not, or things like that. And of course, if you're using a native prototyping tool, then it's easier to just hand it off to the developers, because it's probably just an addition of an API, and then they are good to go. And it's faster launch in the market, basically, and that helps a lot. um, so yeah, let's not go to client examples. um, just a second, I think we're missing some slides. I'm so sorry. Perhaps let's go back to my screen and then I'll just share my screen. It's easier. Um, yep, I think this is easier. Yeah. So basically, how does rapid prototype work? To me personally, I would focus on the three main intentions behind rapid prototyping. One is focus on the customer goals. We'll dig deeper into this later. Uh, Choosing a fidelity type, if it's low or high, depending on if you have a design system or not, things like that, and gathering feedback and iterating. So what I mean by focusing on the customer goals is when I mentioned first that when the front end, the marketing, when a group is involved with from different backgrounds, it really helps to understand what the journey map is of the customer. And when you pick out a specific flow from that, it's easier for everybody to align on that specific flow. And when you're prototyping, it's easier to get a little bit more clarity on, okay, we are building a habit forming app. Now let's focus on the to dos or the home section. And if you can categorize it and dig deeper and get more clarity on that, it really helps everybody to align. And it also helps the researchers to write their scripts very specifically and with clarity. For example, McKinsey had done a research and they say that companies that use customer journey mapping see a 30% increase in the customer lifetime value. This is in general to the discovery phase and the research phase that I was talking about, that we kind of prioritize at UX Studio. And doing this helps increase the customer lifetime value. Basically because you know what the needs are, you're clear on what the needs and the goals are for the users. And when you link these users pain points to the business objectives, and when you combine that, becomes even more easier to understand what you can test and iterate. So yeah, first thing is get clarity on what your customer goals are or what you're trying to prototype. That's the main thing to understand first. Write down your problem statement and get clarity on what the problem statement is. And it always helps me when I write it down in a step-by-step manner and just go to the root of what the problem we are trying to solve. And fidelity, when it comes to fidelity, like I said, if the company or if the client has a design system, then it's very much easier to just prototype things on Figma. And depends on the complexity as well. So if you have a design system, then you can use Figma. But if there's a complexity in the prototype, for example, like I said, if you want to do a contact form, or an e-commerce checkout, then you would probably be better off with using a prototyping tool like Protopy or Axure, which enables you to do conditional formatting and conditional prototyping. But nevertheless, a simple prototype, a linear prototype on Figma serves the purpose most of the time. And it's also easier for researchers to just follow you and follow you on Figma or FigJam or wherever you're collaborating. So it depends, fidelity. And sometimes paper prototyping as well works when you can invite your research participants, your target audience to your office. Or if you're testing things in person, it's completely fine to do just paper prototyping and it saves a lot of time. You just sketch it out. Earlier, I used to do a lot of paper sketches first and then put that into a digital tool. It does take a bit more time, but it, like I said, clears your mind of what the intention behind the prototyping is, and it makes your life and goals easier to understand and execute. The harder thing that I faced when I did a lot of just digital prototyping was where should I put this button there? Should I put this button there? Or do we need a search bar here? And all of these questions just come up, and it's bound to make you a bit more confused and drag the process a bit more. So paper sketches definitely help. If you can do that in a day, then that's even better. But like I said, customer goals and the needs first, and then you can easily do those things on paper and digital tools. At UX Studio, we mostly use Figma, but there are a lot of people who use Agile. Agile is a HTML based HTML rendering prototyping tool, and it's one of the most advanced tools that I've used. You can also incorporate your JavaScripts in that, and I've been using that since I joined UX Studio. So it's really amazing. I will show you an example where I used Prototype because it was a need to use a voice input, and Agile does not have it. So it also depends on what your needs are as a prototyper or a designer. So I will show you an example later on. The third thing is gathering feedback and iterating, and this is one of the crucial aspects of prototyping. Prototyping and usability testing go hand in hand. There's no point of doing a prototype when you don't test it out. Sometimes it's okay to get stakeholders on board or investors on board, but all of these things don't matter if you don't have data and if you don't have validation for whatever you're trying to build. Eventually it's going to cost if you don't test or gather feedback in a very effective way. And what I mean by an effective way is when you partner with a researcher, and that's how we do it in UX Studio. So usually a designer is partnered up with a researcher, and the researcher collaborates with the designer to create the script and to create the questions that needs to be asked to the participants. And we do a lot of testing hand in hand with, and for example, on a day, let's say a researcher does 2 or 3 tests, and on the last hour of the day, the researcher gives feedback to the designer, and the designer already has some ideas in mind where he can iterate them and improve them for the next test set of tests. And by NN Group, there's a research that said that testing products with just 5 users can uncover up to 85%, which is quite true, because a lot of the issues are, in a way, I wouldn't say like generic, but it does open up your eyes. And most of the time, most of the things that we design now are standardized, but the things that need to be experimented and tested, they can be easily validated with the maximum of 5 tests even. um, and and as you iterate, you just keep progressing, and then eventually it keeps getting better. For a, let's say, 20 tests, and then your product is, or the feature is 90% validated and good to go, I would say, to the market. Yeah, it could also be a good way to convince your investors to spend some money on you. Yeah, like I said, the benefits: shared vision, quick feedback, shipping features, easier handoff, and yeah, pivot. Yeah, the good thing is that in a matter of 2 months, let's say, in this discovery phase, it's very easy for stakeholders or the clients to understand what the product or the feature is doing in the market, to understand how the MVP is working in the market. And a lot of the companies in Silicon Valley, they tend to pivot a lot at this phase, which is the best phase to pivot, because once you develop a product and you want to change the whole scope, then it becomes a bit more harder. I read somewhere that it takes about $1 million a year, including the cost, the human resource, software spending, and all these things, just to build a product. I mean, I'm not sure about the numbers, but it's somewhere around that. And it's a lot of money. And when you can easily prototype and test it out, and there's a lot of research pools out there right now where you can just upload your prototypes and get it tested as well. And not just usability tests. So the more you get tested, the better it is. And it's also better to include a lot of the stakeholders because, like I said, for example, a backend person comes and, okay, I can give you a live example, not live example, I can give an example that I've experienced, which is when we were building a feature for let's say a Zoom competitor, a video streaming or a webinar tool. We did a lot of these features and we tested it out, but eventually when the product rolled out, we got to know that it was incapable or incompetent to accommodate tons of users. We didn't check for the resource heaviness of that particular tool, which probably would have been easier if we kind of did a native sort of prototype and tested it out, so as to understand how it is in terms of resources. So this is something that we uncovered as well, and things like these can be done using prototyping and depending on the need as well. Yeah, I'd like to share some examples right now. It's not particularly okay. Are we all good? I'm going to share some client examples. Johanna, are we good? Yep. Okay. That's a lot of lag. Okay, I'm going to share my entire screen. Dun, dun, dun. So, yeah, for example, so like I mentioned, I used Protopy when there was a need to use voice AI or voice inputs, and none of the other prototyping tools gave me that flexibility. So we were kind of brainstorming on a lot of voice AI tools and AI tools in general at UX Studio. And mm, because of that, we kind of came up with a prototype to test out how we can better make an e-commerce experience using voice. And to execute that, I used Protopy, and these designs I made it in Figma, and I just imported the designs to Protopy, which is just a plugin away. And right now I'm going to talk onto the mic for the prototype, so please bear with me and you will see a change here. So show me some new arrivals. So as you can see, just with my voice command, I could go inside, and we were kind of experimenting as to how we can use voice to make the experience better. Should it be like a chatbot, or should it be in the filters panel? So a lot of these things, and we kind of tested these things out. And you can also say, show me shorts. I don't know if this is going to work. Oh, wait. Show me trousers. Show me trousers. Hopefully it works. Yeah. So it works because, yeah, I basically added a voice input command as a filter called trousers. And if any voice command that contains trousers is inputted, whatever, and then so that the filter kind of changes. And if you look at the screens here, wait, is this a prototype itself? Okay, How can I go to design? Okay. Anyway, I don't have the design right now, but it's basically different screens, and I'm just connecting those screens through voice commands and keywords of those voice commands. In this case, the keyword criteria is very limited. You can just add a limited number of keywords. uh, Imagine if you could connect like a database to this prototype, and or use an LLM or a machine learning algorithm, then that would be really amazing when the system could understand what you're trying to say and show you relevant results. So this is a start to a prototype, start to a product that could potentially have a lot of use cases. And it's easier when you kind of prototype this and test it with the relevant tool. So this is protopy. And the other thing, spoiler alert, we're coming up with a new website for UX Studio, and I don't know if I should be revealing this, but it's not a lot actually. So I use Framer here to test out some basic ideas that we had in mind. For example, this hover states, or hovering this and just animating this. How does it work? The responsiveness, how does it work based on that? For example, we had this idea for scrolling, sticky scrolling feature. So it took less than a day for me to do this, and it just immediate. Once you know the tool, it's easier for to just prototype it and test it and show it to people and get some feedback. And for example, this was something that we wanted to check if it's one, if it's resource heavy, if it works on all browsers, if it works on mobile, how does it work on mobile? All these things, we kind of write these questions as assumptions and hypotheses, and we kind of start building on these things component by component and testing these things out. So that's how you can do it. The other example is kind of like a mm, health assistant app, and we had like an assessment sort of module, and this is the homepage module. So we had different phases or roadmaps for when we worked with this client, and assessment was one phase, and this homepage was another phase where you can enter whatever and you just kind of works. And messaging is another module. So you just build these modules one by one and you keep testing it and see how it works. And of course this is not the final one, and you can also just add medicine. This is another module. And the thing that I was telling you about, Figma versus, let's say, this is Axure, this is built on Axure. So for example, I can just type aspirin, or and it shows me different search results based on what I type. And this is happening through a table, database table. And since it's a HTML rendering, it works just like a drop down basically. And I can just use this. But whereas if I had to do it in Figma, it would take a lot of work. I have to build multiple screens. Of course, now with variables, it's much easier. I haven't experimented with that, but obviously it's getting better. But back in the day, this was a couple of years back, and we tried this, and it's really good. I mean, it helps researchers get prepare better questions, avoid a lot of extra assumptions, and helps the participant also gain like an actual experience of the product. Yeah, 2 times a day, and I can just do, if I just go and it just changes to night basically, and beyond a point it just changes. And it's also like a cute add-on that you can test. You can also add a calendar widget for yourself, and it reflects on what you click. So for example, if I had to build this in Figma, I have to prototype for each date, but in this case, whatever date I click, it's just going to show up. So I can just save, and then it's adding the whatever I've added but whereas in Figma, I'll have to prototype just specific scenarios. So this is one advantage of using a prototyping tool like Azure or Protopy or Framer, depending on your needs. And now Figma, of course, because it's a bit more advanced. So these are some client examples. I will stop screen sharing. So I'm curious if you all folks have any questions. Before we move forward. Not for now. Thank you. All right. So that was kind of like the client examples that we have. And the basic do's and don'ts for rapid prototyping, I would say, is like I said, focus on the problem statement, avoid all the fluff. Like I said, if you're building a habit tracking, and if there are specific modules, then just focus on one of the modules. And because I'm trying to think of an analogy right now. It's like a it's like a clinical trial, basically. Oh wait, sorry, we have a question. Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, I will answer about the Figma variable soon. And yeah, thank you. Thank you. Wait, I can do something cool here. Look at this. See, your question is on the screen. Okay, sorry. So yeah, the perfect analogy I think I would give is, let's say, a clinical trial for, let's say, like an antidote or like a medicine or a drug that you are trying to come up with. And clinical trials, you are doing a lot of research but with very less variables. So just to avoid confusion and a lot of bias, usually the researchers usually stick to specific niche audience and test it out first, and then slowly build through that. The other example could be like making a movie. And when you do a movie, you do a lot of test shoots to test different cameras, and you also do a lot of storyboarding to see how it looks, how it works, what the color space is. And it's just one by one, and it's not a lot of variables coming together. And the other, like, SaaS specific example I could give is A/B testing. So by definition, A/B testing is just two variation, one control and one variation, where you have the original one and then you have a variant. And in that, even in that, you don't add more than two variables. Just one variable is quite is the best practice, I would say, for an A/B test. For example, you're creating a homepage and you have a button that says sign up, and you want to test another button for conversion that says uh, sign up for free webinar. So having that one variable is going to give you a lot more uh, a better conversion rate and a better significant result, rather than if you had multiple variables in that page. For example, if you had tested out the hero image, the button, the scrolling patterns, and all these things. So that's something that you can keep in mind, that focusing on the problem statement and a specific problem statement, having a clarity on what the problem statement is. In this example, it could be I want to create an onboarding flow for a habit tracking app and ask the user for their demographics, and that's it. And you can do that in multiple ways, but it helps you understand what you're trying to do, and it helps everybody else as well. And the most key thing I would say for this whole discovery process is documenting the progress. Right from day one, when you're starting to prototype and when you're testing it out, it's always good to document. Azure, Figma, any tool right now has comments and notes, and I advise everybody to use that, because it keeps everybody in the same page on the same page, and you can also track back to different things and understand why a particular thing worked, or why particular thing didn't work. And it's easier when you have different hypotheses, and you can slowly branch out to different hypotheses and test each of them out. And it's easier to track back to these the original prototype and see how it kind of grew to these different branches, and how the product came to a life. And yeah, don't make it a complex one. Keep it as simple as possible. Test one thing at a time, and make sure the research questions are as specific as possible. A lot of the tools now, Protopy, Axure, Figma, have a lot of pre-made components, and I advise, if it's not a matter of testing the look and feel or testing the branding, then just use these pre-made components and build the prototypes from there. And it saves a lot more time. It's not about aesthetics at all. At the beginning, after you have a certain grasp of how the product or the customer journey is, you can start adding your colors and all these things. So these are the do's and don'ts. Yeah, I think that's about it. We have Q&A now. Let's go. So I think the first question, let's show the question here. This is amazing. I love this tool. Okay. So yeah, currently I don't use Figma uh, variables for prototyping. I kind of paused Figma for a bit because I was learning Framer and Protopy. But it's something that I'm curious. The other tool that I'm kind of learning right now is Play, which kind of helps you build native iOS prototypes. It uses Swift UI, so that's something that I'm learning. Just a second. So yeah, this is something that I'm using now, but I'm aware of all the Figma updates and the variables that are happening, and it's really interesting. I tested it out a couple of months back, and I still felt it was a bit limiting in terms of conditional prototyping, and it takes a bit more time for me to learn it. But I think it's going on in the right direction. Also, I faced a lot of issues with Figma in terms of um, crashing before. Right now they made that even better. The rendering and everything is much better. So yeah, right now I just use Protopy, Framer, and I'm testing out Play. But yeah, these are my tools, and I like to experiment with the different tools because for example, Protopy, you can use it to connect with Arduino and, let's say, test out a banking ATM machine or a POS machine. So based on the use case, I think I want to equip myself with a lot of the tools, which kind of would help me judge when I get a problem in a better way. So yeah, right now, yes, I don't use Figma variables for prototyping, but I'm planning to use, sorry. Um, how can you use variables for prototyping? Yeah, again, yeah, I don't know the proper use case. One proper not proper, but one use case that I can think of is like an e-commerce application, um where you want to open cards based on what the user has clicked. So you can probably link those cards to different variables, and once the user clicks, and you can, instead of creating separate screens for each product card or product description. So that's something that I can quickly think of, but I'm lost on or not aware of the um, further examples, let's say. The other thing that I find or think about, or like I said, like I mentioned before, is that also depends on the context and the problem. To this date, I didn't find it necessary to use Figma variables, because I was I was familiar with other tools, and that kind of served my purpose in a better way. um, but you never know, I need to test it out with Figma variables. um, just a follow up, are you Agustina, are you asking variables for Figma or just in general? Okay, okay, so then I answered that. um Damn, this feels like a live broadcast. There's a lot of lag, and I'm using a streaming service, like a streaming tool. Hmm, interesting. Okay. Any other questions? I hope you enjoyed this short presentation. It's something that I'm really fond of, prototyping, and I also gave a couple of live events on prototyping with accessibility in mind. How you can keep accessibility principles in mind while prototyping. So it's something that I really enjoy. So I'd be happy to discuss a lot of these things and learn more. Any further questions? Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. All right. I think we are near ending, near to the end. We still have some time, but that was the kind of end of this presentation. Um, yeah. Support the stream, support our live webinar. This is something that we are trying, and we want to collaborate with a lot more people and learn more from a lot of people, and also share our learnings. I think that's how we can grow together and build things together. um yeah, there's a lot of things going on in my head, but yeah, I think I will stop this. Interesting. Wait. AI facilitates prototyping with any tool. I'm curious as to what that means. Um, are you referring to the new update, the that Figma came up with? And yeah, thank you, Sumit, for this point. I think it's also a great point, and it's AI direction that is happening a lot right now. Yes, yes. I agree. AI does help do a lot of the smart animate, let's say, in Figma terminologies. It does help you a lot, but I strongly believe that there are certain use cases where it kind of makes it difficult to just smart animate within Figma. I think when you start complicating it with variables and a lot of these conditions, um, it becomes harder right now. Of course, the AI is going to grow and it's going to learn a lot. So, of course, it's going to help make it easier in terms of prototyping. And that's something really cool because it aids in faster design and development and shipping things faster. So, yeah, Um, I don't condone AI, let's say. I think it's there to do some good and make it faster and easier for a lot of people. Thank you for that. Go AI. All right. If you don't have any further questions, I think I will end this stream right now. You can obviously watch it back and connect with us on LinkedIn and Instagram. And please connect with me on LinkedIn, especially if you have some ideas and questions on prototyping. I would love to interact and chat. Prototyping, like I said, is something that is close to my heart, and I am constantly learning about it. So, thank you everybody for joining this webinar. I truly appreciate it. Hope you've learned a bit, and have a good rest of the week. Thank you.